concrete building, the ceiling is 2 feet thick. It's meant to be bomb-proof. Those little windows that you see around the outside were not for letting light in, they were escape hatches for the 12 wrens that worked in here on 6 of these machines. As you can feel, it's cold in here, but it's a bit like this in the wall as well. In the summer it's jolly hot, and in the winter, damn cold. The wrens call this the hell hole, with good reason as well. But this is a machine called a bomb, and this machine was invented from an idea of Alan Turing's. He came up with this idea, and with this machine you can break into Enigma messages. Certain conditions have to prevail, and one is that you need what they call a crib. You know what cribs are from school days. In the context of code breaking, a crib is a familiar word or phrase or saying that is used by the operators, just as you write to each other, and you probably finish off your letters, yours sincerely or yours faithfully, and you probably start it, you know, dear Auntie Florrie. You never change, you always use the same words. And the German operators used phrases in exactly the same way. 2 common words that were used, the class of them everywhere, were Heil Hitler. They're not so popular now, but in those days they whacked it everywhere. Another word that was used a great deal, probably to do with meteorological reporting, was the word weather forecast. The word weather forecast, if you do or don't know it in German, is Wettervorhersage. It's a nice long word with lots and lots of lovely letters. Another much used phrase was the phrase for nothing to report, and that was used quite a lot by some of these operators. In German it comes up to that bottom bit with no special events or no special happenings, kind of a sort of Ereignisse, that bit there. And this was much used, very valuable. Now I'll show you how. You may remember on this machine it cannot encipher the letter you push down to itself. So if you had this load of rubbish, this gobbledygook that's been received over the airwaves by one of our Y stations, and you knew that within that somewhere or other there would be that expression for nothing to report, what the code breaker would do with pencil and paper is just write out those letters, write out what he thought somewhere or other would be in that message, and compare the two. And what he's looking for are any positions along here where a letter has enciphered to itself. And you'll see just here the letter O has enciphered to O. So that clearly can't mean that, can't mean that. So the code breaker with his piece of paper would just slide it along one position and try again and see if any letter has enciphered to itself, and up here you'll see the letter I has enciphered to itself. So once again, that top bit can't mean the bottom bit, because that machine can't do that. And so he'd go on sequentially, one letter at a time, until he came to a position like this. Now in this particular position, you'll see not one of those letters has enciphered to itself. So it's possible that that top bit might mean that. So what does the code breaker do then? He produces what is called a menu. And the menu looks like this. It's a bit simplistic, but this is exactly how I did it. That menu there, you'll see in this particular menu, the M might be represented by an H, or a C, or a B, or an R. And on the example I have here, this one, the letter E might be represented by a D, or an M, oops, another one, or an N, that's small, or a G. There's a couple more up there. So this would be a very strong crib. Armed with that, and the menu that would have been constructed from it, they would send this up here to the wrens. See, there were 12 wrens up here, and working 2 on each, of 6 of these. This is, by the way, is not a real one. This is another film prop made for film Enigma. There's one here, one over the back. But there is a real one down in B block, and it's working today. The wrens would take that menu and set up on these drums the various positions that they think might be the answer. And then they would run this thing. So what does it do and how does it do it? Well, these 3 represent an Enigma machine. These 3 represent an Enigma machine, so do they. The whole thing represents 36 Enigma machines, all wired up together and all working as one unit. There are 12 miles of wiring in this thing, and it works in a negative fashion. Do take a seat, gents. It works in a negative sense. It doesn't try and find the actual answers for this code breaking, but what it does do, and do it very quickly, it eliminates millions and millions of unlikely combinations. Do any of you read Sherlock Holmes stories? Oh, good man, thank you, sir. Well, if you have read the book, the story called The Sign of Four, Sherlock Holmes said to Watson, Watson, if you can eliminate all the impossible, whatever is left, however improbable, must be the truth. Now, you couldn't get a better analogy for this machine than that. This thing eliminates millions and millions of unlikely combinations in a very short time. A complete run lasts about half an hour. And what this is doing, so working in a negative fashion, eliminating the unlikely. And what it's doing, if you bear with me while I do my blue piece of it, it's looking for places where none of those letters line up. You remember, if any letter lines up, that machine can't do that. So it just ignores it and keeps running. The moment it comes, like a big continuity tester, the moment it comes to a spot where nothing lines up, it will stop, and on these three drums here, it will indicate what it thinks are the three starting positions of those rotors, or set position of those plugs. The wrens will note that down, start it running again. It may stop twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. It may be a few more. Sometimes it never ever found the answer, but mostly it did. Having noted down those positions, those possible positions, they would send that back to the code breaker, who would do some more pencil and paper work, and eliminate, if he could, all except one. He would then send that information to another department. You'll have seen lots of these. We started off, a photograph of these when we were in the chauffeur's hut when we started our tour. This is called a Typex machine. And if you like, it's our version, the British version of what this did. But it was more complicated than an Enigma, and it was never broken by the Germans. But it could be set up to work like an Enigma machine. So if you think you know what those 3 wheel starting positions are, those wheels, you can set them up on here, and you can type in on this keyboard that gobbledygook that you received over the airwaves. And if out the other side on a bit of ticker tape comes the expression, nothing to report, or kind of something like Ereignisse, you know you'd broken the code for that day, and you could read every other message that came in via that route on that network. Mindful, of course, that at midnight, it all changes again, start all over. Right, so that's how that did it. Now, there were 210 of these, 211 of these things built in the war. Did I say they weighed a ton each? They were made down in Letchworth, the British Tabulating Machine Company. So you had half a dozen here, load down at Stanmore, and there are another outstation of these. But, we had about 1,500 wrens working on these night and day. Night and day. But there is one working in B Block today. They're working on GCHQ, some codes they send up to us to see if our people can still break codes on it. They sent a load up, or they sent 7 up last year. They're still doing some today. Last year's was rather nice. They sent up 1 per day for a week, and it was nice to come in the following week and say, how did you get on with that code breaking? And they said, well, at the end of it, it was GCHQ 0, Bletchley Park 7. So we were, yes, we've done it. So if you go down to B Block, you'll see they're working on some today that have been sent up by GCHQ.